When people ask the question, what makes a student get up at 8 o'clock and be excited to come to class at 8 in the morning? The motivation to understand that it takes an expectation that class is going to be engaging, class is going to be exciting for that student to want to come every day. And while I know a lot of my colleagues would probably say, well, the motivation should also be the opportunity to learn and get a good grade, I find that sometimes that you can have both. And that's really what drove me into enhancing this particular course with technology. If you take a look at logistics in particular, it's always been a hands-on field. More recently, we've had a lot more technology-driven disruptions that is even creating the need for students to learn about some of these tools in order for them to be employable, as well as help fill the talent gap that we have in the industry. This is not a one-time deal. The enhancement of a course with technology is not a one-shot experiment, it's a journey. And for me, that journey began when I got exposed to MSU's real classrooms in 2015, and it offered an opportunity for me to do things a little bit different. The greatest struggle in particular, because this is a traditional three credit hour meets 2 times a week, so the greatest struggle was how to adopt all of the technology and all the flipped active learning techniques that a real classroom encourages without giving up any class time. And for that reason, I've used D2L a lot to supplement and to augment what it is that I'm able to do in the classroom. The primary focus of the things I'm able to do in the classroom is literally to use technology in a way that students get a hands-on experience to touch the tools that they're going to be using in the workforce. And I was able to get access to 2 commercially available tools because of academic agreements that MSU has with 2 main vendors, IBM and SAP. In order to be able to kind of use those 2 tools, I, for example, would load training videos on D2L. So students are able to not only watch it before coming to class, they're also able to go back to it over and over again as they continue to improve their skills and to get better. Within those 2 technology tools, the reason I opted for commercially available as opposed to just any other academic training software was I wanted to be able to hit 2 goals. One, I wanted students to be able to hit the ground running when they get into the workforce, so there is no major translation that needs to happen. I also wanted to eliminate the potential fear of new tech. The only key thing that we then needed to overcome in order to make this happen was the ability to essentially schedule labs to have students work on these tools. I opted to not have to deal with the typical juggling act that most faculty have to. Instead, I experimented with MSU's VDI infrastructure, and it's a virtual infrastructure that essentially brings the lab to the students, and students have virtual access to technology or to lab computers through their own personal laptops. And so my students will come to the real classroom every day with laptops, and we will literally log in our way through VDI for access to these tools. Because the real goal was interaction, student to student, as well as student to faculty engagement, instead of a traditional research paper where students work off the classroom, I opted to use a student blog project. That blog was hosted on a public forum, so students also got an understanding of peer as well as public review of their work. In my humble opinion, I thought that ensured accountability. Some students didn't like it. In fact, the whole idea of creative writing, or free will writing, as some of my students will call it, was challenging to a lot of business students. But over time, and this blog remains up, we started it in 2015, and it's basically stayed up since then. Students are able to go back and see how the topics they worked on 4 or 5 years ago has grown as other students in this particular course have added to the topic as time has gone on. And so as part of a continuous improvement, this is one of the things that I've actually found to be very, very worthwhile. From my perspective and from my students' perspective, this course is not easy. So I continue to improve. I continue to find balance with the amount of work that students have to do, for example. But overall, the students' performance evaluation, especially once they've gotten to the workforce and they contact me, has always been overwhelmingly positive about the value that they have derived from engaging in this particular type of class. I'm not saying that the journey has ended. I continue to improve. I'm hoping that this video gives faculty a realistic perspective of what it takes to get things like this done, especially if done from the student's perspective, which at the end of the day I think is all that matters.